Thank you, councillors, staff, members of the gallery, the press. A warm welcome to the first meeting of Temora Shire Council for 2020. Great to see you all here looking well. I do advise you that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website in due course. And I would obviously remind councillors and staff to refrain from any inappropriate remarks, as I am sure that you always certainly do. Councillors, we now bid welcome Mr. Bill McCauley, who is a church elder at the Temora Uniting Church, and he will deliver us in our opening prayer. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor. But before I start, I'd like to take this opportunity of hoping you all have a happy and prosperous New Year. I hope you all had a good Christmas and enjoyed every minute of it. And as Rick said, the first meeting here this year was the first of the new millennium. But anyhow, it's good to see you all here again. And I've seen the comradeship between all of you is quite noticeable from my point of view. And I think in any organisation, that is the number one success of something.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see how we go. Let us all pray then. Lord God, our Heavenly Father, it is right to give you thanks and praise at all times. And at this time, our prayers go out to all those who have been involved with the fires. Although we have not had fires in our local district, there have been some that have been absolutely catastrophic, some of them. Those who have lost everything and some who have had to start all over again. Also to those who fight the fires to retain them, those who are working to save lives and infrastructure and livestock and animals. We may all be reminded that this is a land of droughts and flooding rains, and we pray, Lord, that these rains are not too far away. This is the first meeting of our local council, and Lord, you are again the first to be invited to be with them as they make their future decisions that will benefit the Shire and the community as a whole. This year will be a very big year for local government, as government grants have been allocated and needed. Our allocation of these grants will need to be a lot of extra work and a lot of thought to go in. We'll also pray for all our local police staff as they work to keep our team, our town safe. Lord, with our councillors, as they make their decisions for the day and for the future. And we ask all of this in your name, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much indeed for making time. Good way to start the year ahead. Councillors, we don't have any apologies that I'm aware of. We have a full complement, which is great. Councillors, do we have any declaration of any interest at this time, please? Councillor Judd.
Letter and correspondence from COI.
Yes, thank you. I just had a non-pecuniary at the Temora West School in correspondence. Councillor Oliver, have you clicking your button? Yeah. So Councillor Oliver is also declaring non-pecuniary as well later on. Thank you very much. Councillor, we don't have any public presentation, but we did have an item in the public forum. Mrs. Tony Ruskin and Cassie Doherty spoke to us in relation to their item of correspondence that we'll discuss a little later from Temora High School. So it was pleasing to hear from them, and we look forward to the discussion a little later. And we will advise on the minutes that you see that we will note in future that we have items in the public forum because they're not captured anywhere, but we will note that from now on. Councillors, confirmation please of the December minutes of Temora Shire Council, that they be confirmed as true and correct. Thank you. Councillor Slay, Councillor Smith moved and seconded. All those of that opinion please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Matters arising out of those minutes, Mr. General Manager.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillors, we now proceed to the mayoral minute, in which you'll have a loose leaf copy together with a late item of correspondence. Temora Shire Council, together with our community, continued to be in shock over the horrific bushfires, particularly in the Snowy Valleys local government area, the Tumut and Tumbarumba districts, and to a lesser extent the Greater Hume Shire. Everyone feels sickened and a strong desire to help those, particularly those who have lost their homes. We also feel a tremendous debt owed to those brave souls who have and continue to fight these wretched bushfires. Council places on record our warm appreciation to all our Temora Shire emergency service men and women who have given time to assist others, especially our friends in the Snowy Valleys Greater Hume region. Their selflessness and their bravery is most inspiring. We place on record our deepest sympathy to those who have lost their loved ones. May they know that they shall not be forgotten. Temora Shire Council has been on the front foot and offered genuine and real support wherever we can. Council recently launched the register for those Shire residents who wish to open their homes to those who have lost everything. This has been received very well, with over 60 beds being available, together with our recreation centre, which Council also offered. Last week, Council launched the Mayor's Bushfire Appeal, with already $5,000 donated. In speaking regularly with the Mayor of Snowy Valleys, Councillor James Hayes, OAM, he informs us cash is what is needed most now for those who have lost everything. The appeal will formally close on the 31st of January. Mayor Hayes has advised they have a foundation set up which our funds will be deposited into, ensuring every dollar will go to those families who need it most. And I know every citizen in Temora Shire has donated and will donate whatever their circumstances so dictate. And please know it is very much appreciated by us all. The prayers and thoughts of us all remain with Mayor Hayes, Greater Hume Shire Mayor Councillor Wilton, their councillors, their staff and their communities. And Temora Shire are here for them whenever they need to reach out. The year 2020, the beginning of a new decade, will be an exciting, busy and productive one. Council has countless projects underway and scheduled, many of which include the State Government's Stronger Country Communities Fund and the Federal Government's Drought Support Extension Program. Our staff will also implement the remainder of our $13.1 million 2019-2020 Capital Works Program. Once again, I ask our Shire community for their patience and understanding as our team work through this very busy and exciting year ahead. Number three, as Council are aware, the General Manager and I have been lobbying consistently on Council's behalf to have the terminal area forecast, the TAF service, reinstated at Temora Aerodrome. Our Federal Member for Riverina, the Honourable Michael McCormack MP, has been most helpful in facilitating meetings with both he and the Minister responsible, the Honourable Susan Lay MP. We have been advised by Mr McCormack yesterday that a draft report will soon be made available for public comment. Mr McCormack has also encouraged us to obtain as many letters of support from interested and impacted groups who see value in ensuring the Temora Aerodrome has our TAF service reinstated. Mr McCormack did indicate he would again meet with us during the consultation period, which will be soon. For many and varied reasons, it is crucial we have a TAF service again. I recommend to Council that we continue intense lobbying for the reinstatement of our TAF service and also obtain the various letters of support. And there is a recommendation there, Councillors, but with also the addition of the obtaining those crucial letters of support. And finally, 2020 is also a council election year. Every 4 years in New South Wales, ratepayers in our 128 local government areas go to the polls on the second Saturday in September. This year, Temora Shire will elect 9 councillors on Saturday the 12th of September. And I ask every citizen who has a genuine commitment to enhancing Temora Shire, who's willing to work hard and be part of a strong and united team, to please consider standing for election. Any councillor and I are more than happy to discuss our role with any potential candidate. And councillors, that's the mayoral minute, and it is presented there for you together with the recommendation, which also should include the letter of recommendation. Someone prepared to move that way, please?
I'll move that
Councillor
way, Mr.
Oliver,
Mayor.
thank you. Second for the motion. Seconded Councillor Winky, thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, Councillor Judd, discussion on the motion.
I might just comment on the last item number 4 about the council election this year. Just recently, I know Councillor Sinclair brought the item up about just how the workload for a councillor has increased over the years. You know, some years ago, you know, it was only 1 or 2 meetings per month. It was your responsibility, but now we're having regular workshops and regular commitments, and I think you know, gone are the days where someone who's working 9 to 5 could ever be a councillor, and I think that's a sad pity, really. And you know, I think, as you said there, I think we really should be starting to set out the role of a councillor, so any prospective candidates can probably really know what they're up for when they take on a job like this. Anyway, that's all. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Judd. I think that's very important to keep that in mind, that it is a significant workload. However, once again, if you're sit down with one of us just to talk about our experiences, it is very rewarding, very satisfying. Yes, the reality is it can be frustrating, but ultimately, well, Councillor Judd, you know, you've been here over 40 years, so there's obviously something good that happens. So again, we encourage anyone just to have a talk and see what it's all about. Council, has been moved and seconded that the mayoral minute and its recommendations be adopted. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, we proceed to your business paper, page 6, the Mayor's report for the month of December, and on page 9 there is a recommendation that the mayoral report be noted. Councillor Slay, Councillor Smith moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, a motion to receive staff reports, please. The Deputy Mayor has moved that way. Seconded, Councillor Oliver. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, the page 10 of the business papers, staff reports. We go over to page 11, General Manager's reports, 10.1, calendar of events. The General Manager.
As written, Mr. Mayor. As written, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, there's a recommendation there that the calendar of events be noted. Deputy Mayor has moved that way. Second, Councillor Slay. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. And declare that motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Nothing of an urgent late nature, Mr. General Manager.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, over to page 12, the Engineering Services Department report, 11.1, Cassidy's Road realignment, and that in the hands of our Works Manager or the Technical Engineering Manager. The Technical Engineering Manager.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, report is as written, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any comments or queries in relation to the report on page 12? If not, there is a recommendation there for you to consider.
Move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
The Deputy Mayor has moved the recommendations. There are seconded. Councillor Smith. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, over to page 14 of the Engineering Services Department report, 11.2, waiving of rural addressing fees. That is in the hands of the Engineering Technical Manager.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Again, report is as written, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. You're on a roll. Councillors, any comments or questions about this very important report that's before you? Councillor McLaren. Councillor McLaren.
I'd just like to maybe see the period go to the end of June, not the end of March, just to give people a little bit longer time to organise this. Things can take a while to order their lettering and whatever. So if it's no imposition on council, end of June.
Yes. Thanks, Councillor McLaren. I don't personally see an issue with that at all if that's the will of council, but ultimately it's a decision for council. I don't know whether the Finance Admin Director has any issues in relation to that.
No problems with that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, there is a recommendation there. You've heard from Councillor McLaren. So Councillor McLaren, would you like to move what's there but change the date to the 30th of June 2020?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So Councillor McLaren has moved that way. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Slay. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? I think, councillors, that it is something that says to our community that, you know what, whatever possible, Temora Shire Council are trying to help, even though this is a relatively minor cost, it's still hopefully a good sign to our Shire community that we are trying to do what we can. So if there's no further discussion, I will put the motion to you. All those further discussion, Councillor Winkie.
Just a question, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we looking at addresses that just have a people's house and building on it, or are we looking at addresses that are a separate block altogether? Because you never know where an accident or where a fire could be. So I'm assuming that we'd be looking at address of all different blocks that people may own.
Right, good question, Councillor Winkie. I'll defer to the Engineering Technical Manager.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I believe properties are addressed of which have a separate rating parcel. So if you own a block of land that's got more than one parcel attached to it, well, it'll have two addresses. Yeah, so not every gate in rural Temora is addressed. However, the main property accesses for each parcel of land should be addressed, whether there's a house there or not.
Thank you. You happy with that response, Councillor Winkie? Councillor Winkie, are you able just to raise your little microphone? Yeah, thank you, just so I can see the flash or not. Now, let's get back on track. There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion. I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Nothing further urgent, late nature from the engineering team?
No, Mr. Mayor, nothing from me.
Thank you. Very busy year, of course, for the engineering team.
Always.
Yes, thank you. Talking of busy, let's proceed to the Environmental Services Department report on page 16. 12.2, the underground petroleum storage systems change to management. The Environmental Services Director.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is a little bit of state government cost shifting. It's now become council's responsibility to look after these underground petroleum storage systems, and we have the ability to charge a fee of which we're recommending $200. This is something that Belinda Bushell is handling on council's behalf, and we have received training on what's required, and we're ready to implement the program.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Councillors, the report's there before you. You will note there was an addition of a word that was put in, which is on your screen, that actually has and further endorsed the recent and ongoing education of this change of management to properties, proprietors and owners. Councillor McLaren.
I'm just curious, what will the inspection regime be like when you go to a service station? Is it just inspecting the cap, or is it an onerous inspection, or?
So the Director of Environmental Services.
The major thing that we're inspecting is record keeping, just to make sure that there's no leaks or substances escaping. There are some visual inspections that you pick up, but there are a list of elements that these service stations need to comply with, and that's what we're mainly auditing.
Thank you.
I was just concerned about the cost on businesses, $200. I thought every 12 months, $200 would be, I thought it was a fairly steep impost on the businesses, but if it's an onerous task, then that's fair enough.
Thank you. Further, the Deputy Mayor.
Just for that, they would be already being inspected, wouldn't it? It's just it's been passed on to local government rather than there would have been inspections done in the past.
The Director.
I would have hoped so, but there will be some upgrades required, and a lot of the service stations have been on the front foot and of doing some of those, but there will be a series of improvements that will be implemented over the years to come. So,
Thank you. Councillors, there is a motion there before you in relation to 12.1 on page 16 for your consideration. Councillor Winkie.
Yeah, I move that way. We
So-
accept the recommendations.
So you'll move that we adopt the recommendation. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Oliver. Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Smith.
Does this involve farm underground storage as well or not?
Thank you. The Director of Environmental Services.
no, it doesn't, Councillor Smith. This is for commercial operators, this program.
Commercial, yep. Thank you. There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, over to page 17, 12.2, the Temora Local Environmental Plan Amendment Report and the Director of Environmental Services.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is finalising the LEP amendment relating to heritage items. We was put on public exhibition and no objections were received, so I'm recommending to progress.
Thank you. Councillors, there is a recommendation there on the bottom of page 17 for your consideration. Councillor Oliver.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll move the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Winkie. Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Nothing further of an urgent late nature from the Director?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, over to page 26, the Department of Administration and Finance. There is nil scheduled to be considered. The Director?
No, nothing. Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Nothing is happening, so that is fine. Thank you. We'll proceed. We'll proceed to page 27. Councillors, we move into correspondence. 14.1, the Area Park branch of the CWA. Councillor Judd is leaving the chamber, declaring his interest, and the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this is the annual request from the Area Park CWA for a rate reduction. In the past, we have given a 25% rate reduction based on the community use of the Area Park CWA.
So, Councillor Smith?
Move that way.
So you'll move that way. Seconded, Councillor McLaren. Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you. If someone may like to collect Councillor Judd, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Oliver. Welcome back to the chamber, Councillor Judd, and during your temporary absence, Council resolved to approve the donation back of 25% of the rate. Thank you. Councillors, over to page 30, 14.2, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request from the Temora West Public School P&C Association. They have their annual fete on the 28th of March, which of course is their major fundraiser for the year. And they've requested the hire of Thomas the Tank Engine, and for Council to make a donation equivalent to the cost of the hire of Thomas the Tank Engine, which from memory is around that $50 mark. It's not an expensive hire.
Thanks, Mr. General Manager. I did note earlier, as did Councillor Oliver, our involvement with the Temora West Public School Council. We're not members of the P&C Association, so declaring a non-pecuniary. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we're required to leave the room, are we, or we just sit in and... Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's all.
Thank you. I mean, again, discretion, but if we're involved, I think it's appropriate that we did. Councillor Slay.
I move that the motion as stated be accepted.
Thank you. So you move that we accede to the request. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Winkie. Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? The Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, is that Thomas the Tank Engine actually usable? Is it?
Good question. The engineering works manager.
Yes, it is.
So it is in working order, Thomas the Tank Engine, which is great. The General Manager.
He is in working order mechanically. We did mention that, however, that he does need a little bit of aesthetic work, which will be done. We're looking at people to do that at the moment. Just a new paint work, and there's a bit of paint flaking off or whatever, but quite okay and mechanically sound and registered as an amusement device.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded that we accede to the request of the Temora West Public School P&C Association for their annual fete on the 28th of March. If there's no further discussion, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare that motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Over to page 32, 14.3, the Temora Greyhound Racing Club, the General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a sponsorship request from the Temora Greyhound Club. There's for their Cup Carnival, which is in March. In previous years, Council has donated $500 to this event in recognition of the good works that they do, and they race there very often and have been a wonderful organisation for bringing people to town.
Thanks, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Smith.
Move that way.
Thank you. You move that we donate $500 to the Temora Greyhound Racing Club. Yeah. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor McLaren. Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Or in further discussion, I had the president of the Greyhound Racing Club here at Temora, Mr. Bill Schwanke, come and talk to me yesterday just to advise Council that the Cowra Greyhound Racing Club are now having their racing meetings in Temora. So, and they've also got several TAB meetings listed for the year. So, Mr. Schwanke was cautiously optimistic about the future. But again, like I suppose all of us, we've got to keep one eye on the ball and the other eye on other things. So, but that was something he wanted me to pass on to Council. So, thank you. No further discussion. Councillor Judd?
Was there a reason for Cowra not having a meeting?
Well, just understand that perhaps their club may not have been as strong as the Temora club, and Mr. Schwanke did indicate that in his discussions with the Minister for Racing in New South Wales, he said that he doesn't want to force mergers of greyhound racing clubs. However, he would encourage clubs to have discussions about whether they'd like to merge. Sounds very familiar, but anyway. So thanks, Councillor Judd. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much indeed. Councillors, we proceed over to page 35, 14.4, Temora High School, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is in the request for funding that was discussed in the public forum for Council's consideration.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Councillors, the letter's there for your consideration. It was great, as we alluded to earlier, that Mrs Ruskin and Cassie addressed us. It is a pilot program, and I think you realise I think the potential of this program, I think, could be very, very exciting, not just for the students, but also for the wider Shire community. But again, this is a matter for Council to consider. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a thought, I should have probably had this thought earlier when Tony Ruskin was here. Is there any provision in the NDIS for any of this to be funded out of that at all? Steve, you?
Thank you. Councillor Oliver, the Director of Administration and Finance.
No, there's personal client contributions. The client gets the package, so the school wouldn't be able to.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren.
Question for the Director of Administration and Finance. Does Pinnacle have any reserves for corporate sponsorship like this to promote Pinnacle in this space?
Thank you. The Director.
I have no idea, to be honest. We have reserves, but they for each program we run.
I just thought this.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren.
I just thought this would be a very good fit, but anyway.
Thank you. Director, do you have any further comments?
In all honesty, I believe the state government has saved billions of dollars by them not having to fund disability, and they should be funding it.
Thank you. There's certainly certainly an argument for that. However, I suppose we've got to deal with what's before us. We'll now defer to, thanks Councillor McLaren, I'll now defer to Councillor Slay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It was pointed out by Tony that this would be, in a sense, almost seeding funds, and that after it had been operational for an undetermined time, then the cost would probably be picked up by the Department of Education. That's not unreasonable to expect. It'd be lovely if the Department of Education could pick up all of these things just on the basis of a submission made to them, but that's not the way that it works. The way that it works is that they will ask that there be adequate testing of the program to display its benefit, to demonstrate its beneficial rating. Given that fact, I think that it would be highly appropriate that Council get behind this. It's a little obscure as to just how much money we are being asked to come up with, because other partners are mentioned, and I certainly applaud the idea of trying to get Pinnacle in on that. Sounds like a good idea, but we'll leave that to Pinnacle. But I do think that if we can have a situation where we are seen to be supporting this sort of an activity, we realise it'll be a massive benefit to the individual students, but it will also be, as Tony Ruskin pointed out, of social benefit to all of us as we come to grips with some of the realities that they are dealing with on a day-to-day basis at the school. So with that, I would certainly say, let's get behind the project. What I'm not able to say is what proportion of this whole cost should we pick up. And if anybody has any value that they'd put on it, I'd be keen to hear that.
Thanks, Councillor Slay. Look, my understanding is that it is, they've come to us first, I suppose, as, the Shire Council of this beautiful place, and to see what we're able to do, if anything, and then from there, I think they're hoping that as a pilot, that if council wanted to do something, then that would be the springboard for others perhaps to jump on board. So thank you, Councillor Slay. I go now to the Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I think this is a good program and definitely is well worthwhile council supporting. I'm in two minds about whether council should be supplying the actual sponsorship, as in cash, but perhaps they should be looking at how we can maybe help out in kind. If they want to, rent some of the council building or something like that. I think there's plenty of organisations out there that probably will support this through Rotary and Lions and so forth. My thoughts are that perhaps we should just look at how we can help them through higher costs and so forth.
Thanks, Mr Deputy Mayor. I think that they had an approximate budget there for higher costs, etc. They had around $2,000 was that figure. Councillors, I think it's also interesting to note that Mrs Ruskin mentioned that where this started in Griffith City, that the Griffith Council had allocated, and of course they're a larger city council than us, allocated $10,000 for that particular program, which obviously was very generous of them. And I for one, I'm like all of us. I think all of us, what I'm reading within the chamber is that I think we all want to assist this pilot program in some way. I think particularly of note, not only to support the special needs students, but also potentially, if this pilot is successful, that it can be actually rolled out to mainstream classes across our Shire schools. But also there's potential, very real potential, for our community groups to perhaps be enhanced and expose themselves to these students in terms of volunteering. We all hear in our various networks that we're short for volunteers. Well, this is perhaps just one possible solution that may assist. Thank you. I go to Councillor Winkie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with what Councillor Slay is saying as far as setting it off, but I have my sort of concerns a little bit about the speed at which our local government, our state government does work at times, and in the different organisations that they've got. And is this going to be for 1 year or 10 years? This is a concern I guess I have, but I'd be all for sort of be behind it for a start to try and kick it off for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Winkie. Well, yes, my understanding is that it is this year a pilot program. So then they'll review that after that 12 months to see how that goes, whether they continue, and then whether they formally submit to the Education Department for full funding. So yeah, pilot program is I think the operative term. I do think Councillor McLaren had an interesting point. I'm just not sure about whether that could be part of the consideration to further take on notice, Mr Director. What do Pinnacle have? I know that that's perhaps out of the box, this one, but maybe in future budgets there may be discretionary sponsorship. I don't know, but I'll get your comments in a minute. Thank you. Councillor Winkie.
Thank you again, Mr Mayor. Given that indication, then if we can sort of see a way clear to fund this for $5,000 for the first year and see where it takes us to from there. If we can dig it up somewhere, and the Minister for War and Finances up the front there can sort of help us out a little bit.
Councillor Winkie, you're suggesting up to $5,000 cash and in kind?
Well, I'm leaving it open at this stage. I'm just throwing it open so we get the ball rolling.
Okay. So you're not actually moving that?
Well, I will move it
Righto.
to kick it off, yep.
Okay, so you'll move that the Temora Shire Council sponsor the Temora High School Ready for Life program
For cash in kind to the
for
value
cash
of,
and in kind
to the value of
$5,000.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, Councillor McLaren,
I'll second
you have
that.
seconded the motion. Is there further discussion? We go to Councillor Slay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that that's a good start. It's a good position. But could I suggest, given the comments that have already been made about the rapid rate at which our New South Wales government operates, that perhaps what we might do is say, we'll give you $5,000 this year and give some of the expertise that has been developed by this council and by council staff in giving nudges to the Department of Education. We've already proved quite often that if a department is not operating the way that it should, we have a very amenable local member who is quite likely to be able to give the right sort of nudge to the director, to the Minister for Education and so on. So I'd like to see it as two, so $5,000 is cash and plus the additional support that we could offer through council.
In terms of lobbying our state member, because I think that's a very good point, that our state member is not aware of this program, and I think that you're quite right that the state member should be informed of it, because I would think, and I think all of us would agree, that this is something that I think our member would be quite impressed with in terms of a pilot program. Thanks, Councillor Slay. Moved and seconded the discussion. We continue with Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I do agree with Councillor Slay on this one. Actually, I was going to bring it up if you hadn't, but I think our local member does need to be made aware of what we're actually doing. I do agree with our Director of Finances. I do believe this is a state government thing that should be funded wholly and solely by them. I do agree with all the other comments around the chamber as well. It's one I think that we should be contributing to somehow in some way, shape or form, and I think this is a fairly good compromise what we have in front of us here now, Mr Mayor. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Oliver. So perhaps the mover and seconder in the motion, would you like to consider that after your motion that and further that the New South Wales State Member for Cootamundra be lobbied for support of the program? So mover and seconder happy?
I'd certainly support that. Thank you, Mr
Thank
Mayor.
you, Councillor McLaren.
Yes.
Happy? Thank you. Well, councillors, if there's no further discussion on this important motion, I will put it to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. And thanks very much, councillors. I do congratulate you for supporting this pilot, and let's look forward to the next 12 months and hope that it's a success for not only the students involved but our wider Shire community. So thank you very much. Nothing of an urgent late nature correspondence, Mr General Manager?
No.
Ah, sorry, there is one. Yes, there is one. Thanks, Mr Director, Administration and Finance. 14.5. The 30s night markets, the General Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. As you can see, councillors, the late report mentions that we have an application for the conduct of a foodies night market in Federal Park on the 28th of February from a private person for council's consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr General Manager. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question to the General Manager. Are they going to be requiring a lot of electricity? Because last time we had a major function up there, the systems in the old railway station couldn't handle it, and they were tripping out on switches and all sorts of things. We had extension leads running here, there and everywhere just to try and cope with the demand. So just
Good
a question.
Thank you. The General Manager.
Mr Mayor, I'm not sure of the answer to that, but we can certainly talk to them about it. They talk about markets, which you wouldn't think would use too much, and although food markets with deep fryers or whatever else could choose some juice electricity-wise. So we can certainly talk to them about that and make sure that that's covered.
Thank you. Councillors, you have that report, that late report there for your consideration. Councillor Slay?
I move
Uh,
I think it's a great idea. I'd move that we go ahead with the idea about council waiving all fees.
Thank you. So Councillor Slay is moving that council grant approval and waive necessary fees. Seconder for the motion is that Councillor Oliver?
Yeah, I'll second it, Mr.
Subject to...
Yes, yeah, and just looking at the layout of the plan, it appears as though that perhaps there won't be a great demand for electricity because of the location of a lot of the stalls, so otherwise they're going to have to be running extension leads as well, I don't know, so thank you.
So mover and seconder are happy to add the subject to that clarification with electricity?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on the motion, I go to Councillor Reinhold.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Referring back to the Teabeg Christmas market night, a lot of the food guys had their own generators too,
Okay.
so
Yep.
I think, yeah, a lot of them come prepared.
Yep. Thanks, Councillor Reinhold. I now go to Councillor McLaren. Discussion on the motion.
Well, just a point, they don't mention any public liability insurance, so I just wanted to tick that box to make sure that we're covered with their insurance policies.
Thanks, Councillor McLaren. I would think, we shouldn't assume, but that's part of the policy, isn't it? The necessary public liability, Mr General Manager?
Yes, it is, Mr Mayor, and we'll be certainly chasing them up on that. Each individual person will have to have their own public liability insurance as well.
Thank you. There's no further discussion. If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we don't have any further items, late items correspondence. Thank you, Mr General Manager. Councillors, we don't have any notices of motion before us. Therefore, we now proceed to business without notice. And we will start 2020 with Councillor Reinhold.
Nothing to report, Mr Mayor?
Nothing to report. Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. We proceed to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just, I'd like to officially thank the Director of Environmental Services, Chris Dunstan, for his work in arranging the repairs in the old signals box building. Thank you very much, Chris. It looks as though we're going to get it repaired rather quickly, so that's really good. So that's all I have to report, Mr Mayor.
No, thanks, Councillor Oliver, very much. That is good news. We now defer to Councillor Winky, business without notice.
No business without notice. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Now go to Councillor McLaren.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Thank you. It's only early, councillors, early in the year. The Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Australia Day is coming up on Sunday week, and we're looking at using the stage and just wondering whether it's going to be ready or not.
Dear, oh dear. That's a very good question, Mr Deputy Mayor, and I will defer to the General Manager.
It is a good question. They sent parts to repair the stage and they were the wrong parts. That was about a week ago when I spoke to the plant manager. I've subsequently today sent him an email for an update on that, but I haven't received that back as yet. I'm hopeful.
Yes, I think we all share those sentiments. I think we're all hopeful, but honestly, to say that it's been a bit of a debacle perhaps would be an understatement. But anyway, we're doing our best and that's all we can do. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor.
Sounds like we could go to Plan B then, just to be on the safe side.
I think you're right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Nothing further? No, thank you. Business without notice, Councillor Smith.
No business without notice.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Now go to Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. You mentioned the bushfires in your mayor a minute before in the Snowy Valleys, but that occasion I bumped into Trevor Penfold the other day, and Trevor's the chair of our Temora Bushfire Management Committee and also a group captain, and he was telling me about Temora Shire, particularly involvement in the bushfire, and I asked him if he can give me some details. And anyway, I've got a text from Steve Holland before, and I just, if you don't mind me reading it.
No.
Sorry, it's on the phone, but in the Duns Road fire in the Snowy Valleys LGA, RFS Plan Temora has only been deploying tankers and volunteers each day to the fire. We have sent 203 volunteers and a total of 70 tankers since the 1st of January 2020. Some of these volunteers and tankers have attended to the fire on multiple times. We have sent one volunteer to the Kempsey fire. Sorry, lost it. Ian, I can't get it.
That's why you're finding it, Councillor Judd. This is in relation to the Rural Fire Service, which is great. Also, the local SES team have been active.
And the Town Fire Brigade as well.
The Town Fire Brigade, exactly. It's unreal. Everyone is doing their bit.
No, Trevor was saying that like Temora and Blaine have really, fought above their weight, and as far as the contribution to the fires. It's unprecedented that we've sent so many trucks and so many men and volunteers to fight these fires all over the state. And I think we must commend them, all the three services, for what they've done. So.
Exactly. We warmly thank them and commend them, Councillor Judd. And when we do receive these rains, that we know we will receive, hopefully sooner rather than later, that perhaps it's a time when Council can sit, reflect and perhaps consider appropriate ways that we wish to acknowledge our emergency servicemen and women.
No, it's certainly, I know when you talk to some of them who've been up to Tumbarumba and Shamit and other areas like that, these are men who've been fighting on open country grass fires or crop fires, but to go up in the hills there, they say it's really a bit scary just what they've been doing, that out of area that's not straightforward at all. So, and you can only see what's happened with, other areas with fatalities, just how risky the job is.
You're spot on there, Councillor Judd. I know in talking with Mayor Hayes, I know that from Snowy Valleys last Friday, he became a little emotional, and I just asked him, what was the thing that he was a little emotional about at that particular time, and he said, I just had a lady that had lost everything, and he said, I was just embracing her and I had nothing else to say to her, and he said, I just feel that I've sort of let her down. And I suggested to him that perhaps all he had to do was just exactly what he did, embrace her and just be there. But again, none of us know unless we're in that awful situation. But you're right, Councillor Judd, Temora Shire are doing their bit, whether it's fighting the fires, whether it's donating, whatever it is, we're all doing our bit as we should.
Right. And when I get that report off my phone, I'll send it to you.
No, please do, Councillor Judd, because I think we'd like to send it out to councillors for the update from an RFS perspective. Right. Thanks, Councillor Judd. I'll double back to Councillor Smith.
On the same venue, I'll avoid what Nigel's just said. Some of the employees from the Rural Fire Service have been away for up to 2 weeks at a time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Smith. Yes, it's a big commitment, that's for sure. Thank you. We now go to Councillor Slade, business without notice.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. At a time when we're talking about bushfires, I suppose our bushfire outside the bank doesn't quite rate. But a number of people have been asking, has there been any development in finding out who caused it, or is there likely to be any development? And also, I think congratulations need to be extended to the people who used their initiative to get that fire out first, because it'd be a pity to see that sort of growth destroyed.
No, great question, Councillor Slade. Yes, it was something that, well, shocked obviously all of us, because even the smoke was coming into my shop, and I thought it was actually something on the computer that was burning or something. Honestly, it was just unbelievable. And if something as green as our beautiful hedges catches on fire, you just think, wow. Mr. General Manager, I don't think that we've necessarily seen anything on our CCTV that's conclusive.
No, the whole, Mr. Mayor, the whole issue was caught on CCTV. We saw the ignition and all the rest of it, but there was no one anywhere near it for at least an hour prior to it. And we can only assume that it was either a piece of glass or something like that that's created the issue, or someone's thrown it out of a car on the way past. One of those two, but we couldn't see anything on the CCTV. It just seemed to be start from nothing, effectively. But just goes to show you how quickly something like that can escalate.
Well, the Town Brigade, thank you, Mr. General Manager. The Town Brigade Captain, Mr. Matthews, indicated that he believed that it could have been the cigarette butt thrown out, but again, that was his view. But he and his team obviously are on the front foot, which is great. And I understand that those hedges will be obviously replaced in due course. Thanks, Councillor Slay. Nothing further? No, thank you. Councillors, just a few updates for you. Of course, we have our round 2 of the $1 million drought extension support program, our workshop on Friday the 24th of this month. And we have on Thursday the 6th of February, just a reminder of our Section 355 committee workshop, which is a very, very important one. The General Manager, I have to say, has put a significant amount of work into that. At least we have a few weeks to read those documents, but it is a very, very important workshop for Council. Councillors, we will have, we're organising a get-together, whatever form that will be, whether it's just a meeting in here or an afternoon tea or a drink or something, with the new inspector that will be moving here from Fairfield. So we'll advise you of that. I think it's great news that Temora Shire will have the inspector in charge of the Temora Gene Coolaman area, but living in Temora. So that's really good news. So we'll keep you advised of when that will occur. Council, just also to advise you, the Riverina Joint Organisation and the REROC, the Riverina Eastern Regional Organisation of Councils review has commenced. The Chief Executive of REROC and I met with via teleconference on Monday with Morrison Lowe, the two gentlemen who will be undertaking this independent review, and we have asked them, as part of their terms of reference, to reach out to not only mayors and deputy mayors and general managers, but also to reach out to councillors to seek their views. Now they're talking about perhaps a Survey Monkey approach to that, because obviously, you know, we had a limited budget of 30,000 that we allocated to them. Ideally, I wanted them to be able to talk to whether it's a group of each councillors or not, but they thought this perhaps may be the best way to go about it. So, councillors, I just ask you, when they do reach out to you, that you give, and I know you will, your frank and genuine assessment of both organisations as you see it, both the strengths and the weaknesses, and that will help inform this report that will be presented to both boards, and they will make recommendations back to each member council. Those boards will meet to consider the final report in April. There will be an interim report in mid-March. So it's a very, very, very important process, but one that we're committed to. And councillors, just finally, Councillor Judd and I have been talking with the General Manager in relation to a very, very big year this year for many, many reasons. Of course, the Warbirds Down Under and the Dame Mary Gilmore Country Music Festival are on the same weekend in October, on the 17th and 18th. And we thought that it would be a great opportunity to perhaps have some national exposure of those significant events, and by inviting our Prime Minister and his family here, and particularly with his links, as Councillor Judd reminded us of, being related to Dame Mary Gilmore. So, and I think, Councillor Judd, your point of the free promotion, if the Prime Minister does come here for Temora Shire, we could not place a value on. So we have written to our federal member, who has since written to the Prime Minister, and he sent a copy of that to us, and that was sent on the 12th of January. So we hopefully look forward to a positive response. Councillor Judd.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. When we first heard the dates of the Warbirds clashing with our festival, you think, well, that's a downside, going to affect our festival. But when you come up with an idea like this, that maybe we can use it to our advantage and get some exposure, I think it's a great idea, and hopefully the Prime Minister will come and visit both Temora and Area Park.
Exactly. Thanks, Councillor Judd, for drawing that relationship to our attention, the Prime Minister and Dame Mary Gilmore. And we hope that the Prime Minister can come, because we get to see the Deputy Prime Minister all the time, but still we'll warmly welcome whomever may be sent. So, councillors, that's all the business without notice that I had. If there's nothing further for business without notice, is someone prepared to move that we receive the information paper, please? Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Oliver. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, any items that you have? I know the Director of Finance Administration drew to the Deputy Mayor's attention and I today how well we're tracking in relation to our rates collection. Understand, Mr Director, we've only had 3 that have applied for these special terms arrangements. The Director?
That's correct, Mr Mayor, and you'll see on page 48 that the rates collections are 1% ahead of last year.
Pretty good. Our Shire community is doing well, and let's remember, councillors, this year is going to be tough for many, not only on the land but in our business houses. But they're meeting their commitments. But again, we remind our Shire community that there are those special arrangements that are available in terms of paying your rates. If you'd like to speak with the General Manager or the Director of Administration and Finance, that is handled strictly confidentially between those two. I go to Councillor Oliver, discussion on the information paper.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on page 58, it was interesting to read the Minister Hancock's report or response to electoral funding. It more or less says it is what it is and suck it up, basically. So
I think that's well summarised, Councillor Oliver. I think that to suggest that we're underwhelmed by the response, I think would be an understatement. It's just very, very frustrating. As the Director again pointed out to us, the Director of Administration and Finance earlier today, that with that rate peg increase that is allowable, that we add to our rates, all that is gone with the increase in costs for our council elections for this year, and also the Emergency Services Levy increase. So it's a constant battle. It is a constant battle. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just further on that exact topic, I wondered if Council would take up that offer from the government encouraging us to discuss this directly with the Electoral Commission with a view to identifying opportunities to reduce the costs or explore other options. I think that would be a great opportunity to have a connection between the Electoral Commission and a council on the ground and let them understand the real costs that we bear and how that, just to have that direct conversation. I think we should really take that opportunity to do that.
Thanks, Councillor McLaren. I think that's a very good a very good point, and I know the General Manager and I have had discussions with Mr Robb before on other occasions, and I think that the door is open, and I think you're right. We do need to take advantage of those opportunities. Thank you. The General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That will happen as a matter of course. They do go through a consultation phase leading up to it. Basically what they mean there though is how you can reduce it by reducing the number of polling places, reducing your pre-poll hours, a whole range of things like that. We've only got the two polling places. I can't imagine Area Park would be very happy if we reduce that to one. We really can't cut it much finer than it is at the moment.
We've only got three, haven't we?
Yeah. St John's Hall.
St John's Area Park and the Memorial Town Hall.
They do mention exploring options for engaging alternative electoral service providers, so...
Remember, we did look at that, Councillor McLaren, before, and they're very limited, those that are available to conduct elections, as we understand it. But we did look at that, some months ago, didn't we? Yeah. Many months ago. General Manager?
Yeah. Our concern, Mr Mayor, with the private contractors was that with any private business, it has a profit imperative, and they've got a limit on what they can do. So obviously, if you've got the choice between doing Temora and Cootamundra or something like that and Sydney City, you're always going to take the really big councils because that's where the money is. It really hasn't been an option for us in the past. It's a very difficult situation, and we're basically we've been advised of changes to their work practices, and they've changed their work practices. We've got to pay for it, and it's another example of the government making decisions, and we have to meet the cost of it.
What are your thoughts
Thank
on
you,
the...
Councillor McLaren.
Sorry, what are your thoughts on their suggestion of conducting their elections by universal postal voting in 2024 elections?
Well, that I think Councillor McLaren would have to consider at that time. I think we did have that opportunity for this year, for this election, as I understand it, Mr General Manager.
I think that's correct, yes, and there was investigation too on the electronic voting.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Councillor Smith, further discussion on the information paper.
Yeah, on the same election, wasn't the cost somewhere around $16 or $18 per head of people that vote in that vicinity?
Question without notice. You're not the General Manager?
It certainly would be around that figure somewhere. It might even be the high end of that. We're talking $66,000 or $60,000 odd, and probably 3,000 voters. So it'd be around that figure.
Yeah.
Mm.
Very significant.
Got a lot of money.
Thank you. That's for sure. But councillors, I still think when Councillor McLaren saying I'm taking on board what the General Manager said too, but I still don't think it would hurt for us to reach out to them and explain to them the facts face to face, as we know them and believe them to be. I still think it's worthwhile. Similar to, let's look at IPART. I remember the CEO of REROC and I went down to their office. They've never had a delegation before, and it was, oh, good Lord, what are you doing here? And that was, remember, in relation to the how they calculated the increase for the rate peg. And when you sat down there, it was just terrific, and they admitted even that it was a worthwhile exercise because our CEO put a heck of a lot of work into the fact and the details, and of course now they reflect exactly what REROC was advocating, which is terrific. So I'm just saying there is potential for some positives to come out of it, but also acknowledging that there may not be. But, yeah. Thank you. Councillor Judd.
Question to the General Manager. With the electoral system, how do we go with our concerns about the postal voting system with the councils and also concern that we expressed last time about the hold up for so many days before they'd even start counting the votes? Whether it's going to be the same this time or even worse or
Good
whatever.
question. Councillor, Councillor Vell, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That did come back to council as we did get a response from the that was the Commonwealth Electoral Commission, I think, in relation to the postal voting system and the fact they held it off so long. And there was an excuse as to why it occurred, there was equity issues and they couldn't do it because of the time involved. And the short, one of the main issues that they said was the short lead-up time between calling an election and the actual conduct of election, which I would have thought would have been a pretty simple thing to do, given the fact that it's purely for political purposes, no other purposes, that they should be looking at the ratepayers or the electors and trying to get a good result for them rather than a political result.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Judd. Oh, sorry. I go to Councillor Winky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wondering, in the current climate with the drought and also the bushfires, given country areas, whether this is a time where we could sort of probably hit the Election Commission and also the state government to sort of make a bit of leeway along those lines, because it's going to be a bit hard on country people if they've got to make a special trip in to vote. Whether at least we could get some pre-poll voting in all these country areas prior to, so that people, if they're in town, they can do their voting and not have to make a special trip and at least take a little bit of financial pressure off them.
Thanks, Councillor Winky. The General Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think the other thing that's happened here is it's coincided with a vast increase in the time of delivery for postal items. There seems to be a focus away from prompt delivery of letters in particular, and that really exacerbates the problem. For people in rural areas, the only option they've got is postal voting sometimes, and just the time to get that to people, it's a week delivery time at times. I'm not sure what the answer is.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Winky in response. Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I'll come back to... hang on. Thank you, Councillor Judd. Good sportsmanship. Councillor Winky.
I was probably thinking not so much of postal because of the time lag, and which is just about a dead loss. But I was thinking if we could probably hit them and to get a bit of pre-poll voting in the country areas this year to, just as I said, take pressure off people when they're travelling, so they're not coming on a special trip just to vote on the day.
Thank you. The General Manager.
We did receive a response in relation to that too, which come back just as an information item, but I'll get that back out again because basically, once again, they said they're going to review it, but Temora won't meet the requirements according to them, which is pretty tough. I mean, the issue is that most of the pre-poll votes, voting stations that are required are in rural areas where they've got long distances to travel. And yet, they seem more focused on the city and the bigger regional communities.
Thank you. I'm just still feeling, councillors, that you'd still like an attempt to at least... I mean, look, the General Manager and I are in Sydney a great deal. And I don't think it would be out of line for us to at least try and attempt to sit down. Now, Mr. Robb from the Electoral Commission, I've got to say, in all our dealings, we mightn't have always agreed, but he has always been, I think, fair dinkum as far as I'm concerned. Frustrating sometimes, but I think at least he seems to be fair dinkum. Councillor McLaren.
On that note, I'll move that the council make representations or contact with New South Wales Electoral Commission to discuss electoral issues with a view to reducing our costs.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Judd. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. I don't think we've got anything to lose. I obviously wouldn't suggest a special trip, but obviously when we're down there, we can have that as part of the schedule of meetings. Thank you. The General Manager.
Mr Mayor, we're down in Sydney on the 26th of February. We might try and get a meeting that afternoon because we don't have anything on until the evening, so
Yep.
it might be an option.
Thanks. So we'll do that. We have the REROC are having a special board meeting and the Riverina Joe in Parliament House in Sydney. And there's already about 10 ministers that have responded to come and address the board, which is great, because let's face it, going to Canberra is terrific, but we're a creature of the state. And, you know, seeing the various ministers there face to face is very, very important. Okay, so thank you very much for the motion. Nothing further in the information paper. Oh, Councillor Judd, yes, you've been very patient.
Just go back to page 41, the works report. While our works engineer's here today, I'd just like to mention about Maxwell's Road being finished and congratulate the engineering department and the outdoor staff for doing a great job. I had the pleasure of driving over it the other day, and it's certainly, they've done a top-class job. And then especially in a drought year, it's probably might have made things easier, but it's also, I know it's been hard with getting water and things like this for the job, so it's my congratulations. I'd just like to pass it on to the staff, please.
Thanks, Councillor Judd, and I'm sure that both our engineering managers, both the technical and works manager, will pass that on to the team. And thanks, Councillor Judd, for mentioning that. I know that's been one of your babies for a long time. As I think I mentioned to you earlier, that the member for Cootamundra has flagged a date for a reopening of Maxwell's Road for Monday the 9th of March, but I'll be in discussions with you, Councillor Judd, and the engineering team when we get that confirmed. The Minister, Minister Toole, will be invited, obviously, but if he can't undertake the official opening, then we will have the local member available. Council, there's nothing further in the information paper. If not, in accordance with section 10A of the Local Government Act 1993, advise that there are several matters that are deemed confidential, and accordingly I require a motion to have those matters considered. Thank you, Councillor Slay. Seconded, Councillor Winkie. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We are now in closed session. We thank Mrs Grant and Mr Wilson. Councillors, we resume into open council, and I advise now of the resolutions that council have approved to be moved into open council. We have the first resolution 1/2020. On the motion of Councillor Slay and seconded Councillor Judd, it was resolved that council endorse the actions. Is that? It's not confidential motion, is it? Ah, yes. Of the Mayor and the General Manager in offering assistance to Greater Hume Shire Council and Snowy Valleys Council, if required, following the recent bushfires. That was carried unanimously. The next report was Area Park Large Lot Residential Land Resolution 2/2020. On the motion of Councillor Judd, seconded Councillor Smith, it was resolved that council leaves the report on the table until further information is received, and that was carried unanimously. The next confidential resolution released into open council is the response to the expression of interest. Resolution 3/2020. On the motion of Councillor Oliver and seconded Councillor Winkie, it was resolved that council support the expression of interest for a commercial facility at Temora Airport, and that was carried unanimously. The next resolution, developer update, resolution 4/2020. On the motion of Councillor McLaren and seconded Councillor Oliver. It was resolved that Council note the report, and again that motion was carried unanimously. So I now require a motion, don't I, to adopt them? I now require a motion, please, to adopt those confidential resolutions. Councillor Reinhold, Councillor McLaren moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, is there any further business before me? If not, thank you very, very much, very much for your attendance, for your input. It was a great first meeting, and let's look forward to a very busy 2020 ahead. I declare the meeting closed.